Hello, and thank you to everyone for tuning in to today's episode of the Hirewell Update. I'm your host, Ryan Brown, Vice President of our Corporate Functions team, and this is my co-host.
I'm Emily Goor, Director on our go-to-market recruiting team.
Before we kick off the show, you can find all of our content at talentinsights.hirewell.com, or if you'd like to learn more about Hirewell and our service offerings, check out our website, www.hirewell.com. We have a special guest today. Hello, Matt.
Hello, ladies. How you doing?
We're great. Happy to have you on the show. It has been a minute, maybe like a year or so.
I feel like it's been a full year.
I think it's been less, but I don't have time to check the archives. I feel like it's every 6 months, but it could be longer.
If we're being technical, I feel like the last time we had you on, there was an eclipse, because I remember making a joke about like Matt comes around as often as like a solar eclipse. Yeah. But we really just need to Google when the last eclipse was.
9 months ago. Yeah. Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Well, we're excited to have you. I guess you need no introduction really, but in case somebody is not familiar with Hirewell, is maybe tuning into our content for the first time, will you just really quickly introduce yourself and tell the folks watching who you are?
Absolutely. I'm Matt Masucci, I'm founder, CEO of Hirewell. And like I said, I'm lucky enough to join, once or twice a year to just talk about some market trends and things that are happening at Hirewell.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we want to talk about today. Kind of wanted to break down just a wrap up of 2024 and then talk maybe some predictions if we're lucky for 2025.
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. So how did 2024 wrap up? What did you see?
It was an interesting year. I think overall it was solid, right? We, started off a little slow, but as the year went on, it continually got better. And so once we got our final numbers, pretty much across the board, it was up 10% from 2023. But it was a little deeper than that, right? We have a number of different divisions at Hirewell, so some were up quite a bit, some were down quite a bit, and we've talked about it a lot. It's sort of been a tale of two job markets. So our real estate construction practice was up 26%. Our go-to-market practice, as you're very well aware, is up 24%, and then our corporate functions team, Ryan, you're also aware, is also up 5%. So those, were definitely strong. We had two other teams that were down. Our tech practice has it saw a nice rebound as the year went on, but it was definitely, still down roughly 8-9% year over year. And our industrial, one of our smaller teams, was, saw roughly a 5% decline. So a lot of interesting things. But, I think kind of when I talk about like the tale of two job markets, ultimately, like the way we look at it is, there were companies who frankly had capital and the ability to invest and grow, and then those that didn't. And so that was kind of a huge trend. And then I'd say the second one was just companies across the board being focused more on efficiency. It's kind of a weird thing to say, because why wouldn't every company focus on efficiency? But in the tech world and in a world where interest rates were zero, money was free, efficiency wasn't a priority, and that came roaring back across the board. And kind of the second point on that efficiency piece was just employees being asked to do more with less. So it was interesting, a lot of different things happening.
Absolutely. It was an interesting year, to say the least. I feel like, post 2020, we've been saying every job market has been an interesting year. So we're just going to keep it going into, the fifth year, I suppose. But one of the things you mentioned, Matt, is, employees doing more with less. And I think an important question to ask is how they were able to do more with less and survive. And I think the answer to that is technology, or working alongside colleagues that were sitting across the country. And I think one of the more important questions for us to ask is how that applies to the recruiting world. And I think it's been obvious, and we've seen this here at Hirewell, but across the job market in general, that the recruiters that have thrived in this market are the ones that have evolved. And so that's, through evolution, things that are happening are, staying ahead of trends when it comes to industries or functions, really having a pulse on what's happening, being able to truly add value to a process too. We're no longer the recruiting world of just recruiters pushing paper and seeing results. It's really adding value and having a pretty big stake in the process and what it looks like. And then finally, the partners that have evolved into more consultative partners from a recruitment standpoint, pushing back on hiring managers, really leveraging technology, creating the efficiencies that you mentioned throughout the process to do things better, to do things faster, and also to do it without breaking the bank too. So I think, it's obvious that these concepts apply to more than those of us that are in the recruiting space. I'm curious, So from the things that you had shared in terms of numbers, could you maybe just dive into those things a little bit deeper?
Yeah. I think, each of the practices we have saw kind of changes throughout the year. So when you talk about our real estate and construction, business, as I said, it was up year over year, but it was pretty front loaded. Like that group does both hiring within the real estate world, so it can be developers, it can be people in the, property management. But a big subset is construction, and that was an area that was absolutely booming sort of early part of the year, and we saw a little bit of a slowdown, kind of probably eight or so months into the year. Things just kind of leveled off as time went on. Well, and obviously go to market being up. Why don't you talk a little bit about sort of what we saw there? What were the kind of the sort of the sub trends within go to market hiring?
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, like our go to market, we have like sales recruiting and marketing recruiting most heavily under that umbrella. I'd say it was pretty heavily skewed towards sales hiring. We've also seen, I've talked to a lot of clients about this recently, but a major uptick in customer success hiring pretty recent toward the end, I'd say, of 2024. And now I know we're not talking predictions yet, but spoiler alert, kind of heading into 2025. So yeah, huge uptick in customer success in comparison to little activity there in the previous like year and a half. And sales hiring was up across all different industries. So SaaS and tech definitely came back online after a slower 2023. Financial services and insurance hiring spiked a ton for us. I know we kicked off like multiple engagements as well for high volume emphasis on the volume for sales hiring, and like meaning like 20 plus roles across a variety of different industries.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the SaaS market coming back. I mean, when you talk about tech or software companies, they have basically two main functions, right? There's people to make the product, i.e., engineers, and then there's people to sell it, salespeople. And so it's always been huge parts of what our business has been. The drop in on the tech side of things was largely in the engineering or kind of software engineers. I mean, I think for a point of reference, at our peak in 2022, I think we placed 350 engineers in that year. And I don't have the exact numbers, but I think that, it's down roughly 40% from those numbers. So, a pretty big drop there. And then we saw that to start to come back a little bit in 2024. But the interesting thing that we saw is, while we're based in Chicago and consider ourselves sort of U.S. or North American based company, we have expanded internationally over the last couple of years. We acquired Triton Exec that gave us operations in Europe and APAC, and you've really seen a pretty big spike in offshore or nearshore hiring for engineers. And so we've seen a lot of companies ask us to help build out teams in South America or APAC, and that was kind of an interesting trend. I don't think it's necessarily a one-to-one correlation, but a lot of the demand has gone from hiring people in the U.S. to hiring them elsewhere around the world. I think, Ryan, we talked a little bit about sort of the trends within corporate functions, but like I think you mentioned before the kind of the consultative need, or the market shifting for recruiters and kind of being more consultative. But talk to us a little bit about like what you saw within, I know we saw a different sort of trend in hiring internal recruiters, but sort of a drop there as well. Talk a little bit about the trends you saw there.
Absolutely. Speaking of drops, internal recruiter hiring has definitely dropped significantly over the years. Clients just in general tapping us to help build out and or recruit for their internal recruiters was essentially non-existent. In 2021, we placed 105 plus recruiters and different talent acquisition professionals. Last year, we placed 5. That is a significant drop. We essentially fell off a cliff when it came to internal recruiter hiring. And, I know we're not talking trends yet. Things are looking a little bit more promising just in Q1 alone than they did probably the entire year last year for recruiters. So I'm feeling positive about that.
I think that's a pretty good segue into like the trends component. What you mentioned, while there was a pretty big drop off in companies tapping us to hire internal recruiters, like I know some of the stuff that you focus a lot on has been in selling exec searches, selling RPOs, but talk a little bit about the trends you saw in particular kind of within your client base.
Sure. So our executive search and RPO business really started to accelerate in the middle part of the year. Our value prop has been and will be, that we place leaders and help them build their teams. Unfortunately, our executive searches delivered, it was an all-time low in 2023, but in 2024, we jumped up to an increase of 71%. So we had a total of 45 exec level searches, which was great. We also saw a big uptick in our RPO business. As you mentioned, Matt, this is an area I've been, focused on in terms of selling. For those that are not familiar with the RPO acronym, it's recruitment process outsourcing. Think of these as multi-month, multi-hire engagements where we're really customizing to a client's needs. So companies have retained us to help them hiring from 5 to 50 plus people, and some are part of very specific initiatives, and other engagements we're running the entire hiring efforts for a company. So these are very highly flexible, highly customized recruiting engagements. Incredibly hot right now. Certainly something that we're seeing a big uptick in this year in addition to last. I think some of the interesting numbers though, in 2023 we sold 5 RPO projects, which is frankly not very good. But in 2024 we sold over 20. So 80% of those were in the back half of the year, which is, certainly exciting. Typically that's when things start to slow down, but it was really promising to see those, pick back up during that time. I think part of the reason for that is some companies, frankly, probably cut a little bit too deep when it came to their internal recruiting. They could not manage the uptick in hiring with their existing teams. And I think others have just realized naturally hiring is not forever. Maybe building out, these large scale internal recruiting functions is not the best case for the business. So, that idea of hiring recruiters and then firing them again, just frankly not sitting very well with organizations. So I think that's where that RPO solution tends to be, a really positive value add for organizations looking to hire.
Yeah, makes sense. I think I have a lot more gray hair than I used to looking back at those 2023 numbers, but that's sort of why. But kudos to you and everybody else who was able to sort of drive demand there. So nice job.
Thanks, Matt.
I feel like we've hit on some, and we've already started to allude to what's happening in 2025. So I guess the next question is just kind of where do we go from here? What does this mean for 2025?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and my take, it's, and this is hardly an outlandish one. I think it's gonna be a lot the same, where the trends we started to see happening sort of back half of 2024, I think are just going to continue. There was so much sort of a slowdown in hiring. There was a lot of talk, if you think back 6-7 months ago, it was the election was going to be the sort of the trigger point, but we actually saw things start to pick up ahead of that. So I think in general, there's going to be the same trends happening where it's not going to be full bore, everybody hiring like crazy, not asking any questions, but I think there'll be improvements. Again, I never want to make any of this about politics, but I think without a doubt, the changes we've had in Washington, companies or CEOs in general, are just apprehensive to make decisions or to hire when they don't know what the future is going to look like. And unfortunately, we still don't know what the future is going to look like, but there's a better idea of what the next 4 years are going to be. And, that's going to impact some things. So that's sort of the high level, I think. I think we all kind of put together a few ideas. Ryan, why don't you lead off? What do you think is sort of your first prediction for 2025?
Yeah, Matt, you mentioned that with the election, things typically slow down a little bit, and it didn't really follow the normal election period of time where things slow down. The election happens, hiring picks back up. Like you mentioned, it kind of happened before then. So, in my opinion, companies that have put off hiring are definitely behind the 8 ball at this point. Quit rates are at a 5-year low. But employee sentiments are also way down too. And frankly, I'm not amazing at math, but that's not a really good combination of things. And as the market starts to heat back up, I think we're going to have to be prepared for a lot of turnover naturally. Plus, there's also more and more of the boomer generation are starting to retire. So how is that going to impact the work? We're already seeing the effects of that quite a bit in our industrial practice too. And, what's happening in one area typically starts to spill over into some other, so some things to be aware of.
I'll take the second one. I think that the change we're going to see, or the trend we're going to see continuing, is people bringing on talents in other markets. Could be offshore, could be near shore. I think that's sort of there's on one hand you have this big push for return to office, but if you're not going to have people return to the office, or if you're going to have people work anywhere, you can really see way different kind of cost points by looking in different markets. So I think that's going to be something that continues to be an interesting trend. It's one thing that we're taking advantage of. As we help clients hire in other markets, we leveraged kind of the folks from Triton with their team in India to help us, but we actually, hired our first person, Miguel, who's based in Europe. And so he's been helping us with clients in kind of a few different time zones. So it's been a great addition and something we're excited about, and we see being a pretty big trend going forward. What about you, Em? You got the third prediction for us?
Yeah, I feel like this is a bit of a cop out because Ryan and I talked about this, and we're going to continwill talking about it, right? Because
I don't think we're going to stop talking about it. I think
never going to stop talking about AI. AI will be talked about a lot this year. But will it revolutionize recruiting? It feels like, again, I don't have a magic 8 ball, but feels like a year at least away. And let's be frank, like it isn't all positive. It has almost completely ruined job postings, applying to jobs with AI, customized resumes, and just that easy apply button, our fave. It's way too easy. So, and don't even get me started about spam email campaigns. We won't go there right now, but yeah, we're not going to stop talking about AI this year.
I have a feeling we will not. No, it's going to continue to be a big topic. I mean, not only with how it impacts obviously recruiting, but just AI positions in general and what that's going to do in terms of the job market. A couple other predictions from me. So I talked about consultative recruiters at the beginning. Those are the folks that are going to continue to win, especially in this market. The transactional ones that don't add value, whether it's to job seekers or hiring managers, they're going to continue to struggle. And you can change recruiters and plug in salespeople, and thoughts will still apply to that. So I think gone are the days of the transactional relationships. The consultative approach is definitely here to stay. And speaking of things that are here to stay, my prediction is that RPOs and custom recruiting solutions are going to continue to expand. 4 weeks into this year alone, we've kicked off 2 large-scale RPOs, each that have 50 plus hires slated for them. And we've got a ton of proposals out for several more. So I think that's going to continue to be probably one of the biggest trends we see in recruiting this year. I don't envision that there's going to be this mass build internally of recruiting teams again. Hopefully we have all learned our lessons about scaling and then firing. And I think this is a really good alternative and obviously a great customizable solution.
Yeah, and maybe a good segue, if you're watching and you do want to talk about custom recruiting solutions, get in touch with one of us. I know, we'll include our information in the caption or the comments or wherever, but definitely get in touch. And on one more note, by the way, we are hiring. Hirewell is hiring, our favorite thing to say. So if you're an experienced full desk recruiter who wants to sell and deliver a mixture of, retained search and custom RPO solutions, I feel like we should have gotten a dime for every time we said RPO solutions today. We'd love to chat. So again, reach out to one of us. We'll include our information in the captions. But yeah, full desk recruiters, Hirewell is hiring.
Hirewell's hiring. I think I said that maybe 1,000 times, in my career here. I love it. It's great to see it continue expanding.
Yeah, James would be so proud. His big goal is call to actions in all our content, and you ladies just knocked those 2 out of the park. Well done.
Not our first rodeo, I guess, but that's just that's the only reason Ryan and I do this is we're just trying to make James proud. So
that's all we're here for.
Are we done? Is that it? We made James proud, so we can sign off. We're good.
Yeah, we can sign off. We did it. Mission accomplished.
Amazing.
But in all seriousness, Matt, I know we rarely get you on here. We really do appreciate it. We know you're busy, and it's great to have you on here. It's fun to discuss kind of wrapping it up 2024 and what we might see, and we'll revisit this.
Well, thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much. That is a wrap for this week's episode of the Hirewell Update. Thank you all so much for joining us. As a reminder, you can find all of our content at talentinsights.hirewell.com, or if you'd like to learn more about Hirewell and our service offerings, visit our website. It's www.hirewell.com. We appreciate you guys joining. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.